Welcome gamers, Critical Blindside here. Today I will be reviewing the little game that could called One Finger Death Punch. And really it's kind of a simplistic, minimalistic kind of game, so there's not a whole lot to review. So to kind of take up a little bit more time, I'm going to jump on my soapbox for just a minute, so bear with me through this rant. I feel it's kind of pertains to the game. The rant is inspired because of this game, so I feel these two go hand in hand. Without further ado, getting up on my soapbox, I just want to talk about something that video gamers, especially serious gamers, feel is a threat. And I want to talk about why, so far, these kind of games have done nothing but really muck up the genre, and really they haven't done much for video games, except whenever a small title like One Finger Death Punch comes along. About 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more, I don't keep up with this sort of thing, something kind of big happened in video games. These small developers made very simplistic, very easy to pump out games on mobile devices, iOS, Android, whatever it may be. These developers started to make boatloads of cash because they're selling their game for $1, 50 cents, somewhere around that, and they're pumping out millions of games at this price. So a trend sort of caught, and the trend was to kind of take major games, or major genre of games, and take one or two elements from those games and make a game out of that for the iOS device or the mobile platform. And for a long time, those games were absolute shit. They were awful games. They stole off of a name to sell some units. They put no time and effort into it. They shoveled it out, and it really kind of messed up the entire mobile platform of games. Now, there are a few games that have done the opposite, who come along and they kind of make minimalistic or simplistic games fun, and you know, it's something that you can do while you're taking a dump, and you don't really want to put any time and effort into it. You're just doing it for a little bit of entertainment while your wife goes and tries on some clothes or whatever it may be. And those games can be praised. However, for every one game that I can mention that does that, I can mention 5 or 6 more that just completely are just trash junk. And this isn't even getting into the games that are solely there to make pop-ups come up on your phone. So I'm not even adding those games because I think that's a joke. So these are just games that developers didn't care about. They're just trying to mimic something and trying to throw it out of the window to try to sell something, just because a few people did something well and made boatloads of cash. So when a game like One Finger Death Punch comes up on Steam, I look at it and I see a stick figure. I see 2D plane. I see no movement. I see in bright bold letters, you can only use the left and right mouse buttons. And I'm looking at this like, oh my goodness, this is going to be an awful game. Then I see 1 or 2 reviews on it, and people are having a ball and a blast playing it. So I figure I have to check this out. And I'm not going to spoil too much of the review, but it's extremely positive. So I just want to kind of let people know that just because a game looks like it's a shovelware, or because it looks like it's one of these simplistic, minimalistic games, does not mean it's one of these shovelwares, pieces of junk. And I don't know about too many other people, but I know I kind of fear that the casual market and the mobile market were kind of taking over video games. There was definitely a point in time where I felt that my major blockbuster video games that I look forward to every single month pretty much were in jeopardy because the developers are seeing how much money they can make with how little development they have to do to make that money. They were seeing diminishing returns on some of these games that they had to maybe take a gamble on, like Mirror's Edge and games like it. I was afraid almost that we were not going to see innovative titles like this that push the boundaries of what video games are, because it's so much easier to make boatloads of money that all these mobile developers are making, pushing out these very simplistic kind of childish games that just happen to become popular. I mean, look at Flappy Bird, for God's sakes. It is a complete clone using cloned assets from other video games, and it has one game mechanic, and that's it. And the guy made thousands and thousands of dollars a day off of this. So keeping all that in mind, gamers like you really have to trust game reviews, and you have to trust Let's Plays and that kind of thing for games like this. And really, these games that do it well, that take a genre of game and break it down to its core constituents and do one or two things perfectly, these games need to be praised, and they really need to be brought to the forefront, and mobile games can then say, hey, this is the way to make a mobile game. It's not to rip off of some sort of popular name and put one or two nice art assets on it and shovel it out of the window. We just kind of need to rise up and make sure that games like this are the type of games that we're getting. So anyway, jumping off of my soapbox now, let's get into the review. So I don't want people to think that I don't have criticisms for this game. I do. There are definitely things wrong with it. However, for everything that's wrong with it, it is completely overshadowed by what it does right. So let's get in. First off, this is the graphics options. I mean, this is it. Windowed, full screen, smaller, and then you can play. So you can kind of see a nice 70s art, or 70s Kung Fu art aesthetic here. It looks, I mean, the drawings don't look that great. You can tell it's low def, but still, I kind of like the theming behind it. It's kind of nice. And then the theming goes all the way into the loading screens and into the main menu that we're about to get into here. I kind of like the retro look. However, there are going to be a few things that you're going to see, and it's going to look very grating. One is this loading screen that'll come up. Kind of looks like this here. It's a red background with these little, I don't know, I have no idea what these little ball things are, but in between rounds you'll see it. It'll cover the entire screen. It'll come from both ends and converge in the middle, and then that's your loading screen. I could probably draw that in MS Paint, and I'm an awful artist, so it's just one of these things that you could spend 45 minutes of an artist's time somewhere, and for very minimal amounts of money, and they can spruce it up and make it look nice. It's just, these are the things that I notice, and it kind of takes me out of the experience. So like I said, this is not a perfect game, and I really, sometimes these things aren't excusable, but again, I can overlook it. So let's get into the menus here. I'm going to go ahead and say the options. You can't even put an S on it because there's only one option to choose from, and that's music on or off, and that's it. That's the only option you get. So don't look for any kind of sliders. Don't look, I mean, there is none. But again, it can be overlooked because of the kind of game it is. So it's another kind of criticism. I would maybe like, you know, some high texture packs or something having at least, you know, MSAA or some kind of options on it. I mean, I have a nice machine here. I should be able to crank this up a little bit higher, but let's not linger too much on that because it's really not about the options. It's about the gameplay. So let's get into it. There it is. There's a loading screen. It just looks awful. So we're going to do levels here, and another kind of bad art asset is going to be this level chooser here. The only thing that I really can say nice about it is they could have gone with a completely linear path that you go, where you just play the next level and play the next level. I would have been completely happy with that. However, they kind of went above and beyond a little bit, and you have divergent paths that you can choose, and they do actually make a difference. So they do actually, they're different rounds, and you have different kind of ways of beating them, and you know, it's interesting. I like that they did that. Also, different paths have different passives that you can get, and yes, there are passives in this game. Another critique about that is that the passive system kind of feels tacked on. It doesn't feel integral to the game, so I'm going to imagine maybe in the last 10 or 15% of the development time, somebody came forward and said, hey, we should probably add something to this, and the team came up with passives. So it's implemented, and you know, the passives do make sense and they do change the game. However, you just don't, they don't feel integral, they feel tacked on. But they're functional, and you know, they work, and they do change the gameplay up a little bit. So I'm glad that they're in there. I'm not saying they shouldn't be. It's just it could have been implemented a little better. So before I get into the play, I'm not going to be able to say much while I play just because of the action. So before I jump into it, let's just kind of set a little bit of expectations here. Up in the top right, whenever the screen loads, you'll notice it'll say like Eagle Claw or Drunken Stance. Those are the different martial arts techniques that my character can do from round to round, and it changes. It doesn't seem like there's any sort of pattern. So I'm not sure if, I don't think that's an unlockable. I don't think you can choose it. It's just what it does is it changes the tempo and it changes the rhythm of your character almost completely. So the drunken fist stance is going to be a little bit more pausey in between, just because of his actions. He has to do these large swinging motions, and then you'll get the I think it's eagle fist or something like that. Those are really quick, snappy motions, and it's just one more level that the developers added in that feels really nice, that changes up your play style. So you don't even really notice it at first, and then you see your character moving differently, and then you notice the different stances, and it's a very interesting way to vary the gameplay without having to have the player learn a whole bunch of things. You just kind of naturally alter your tempo. So I almost consider it kind of genius way of making things different. Also, my character is going to be center. The character does not move. You can't move left or right. There are only two buttons in this game, and that's left mouse and right mouse. So you can't move. So under my character, there'll be like a little reach to the right and to the left. That is where I can hit somebody. So as long as there's characters or enemies within that territory, I can hit them. If they're outside of it, I'm going to miss. And if I wait too long for them to come in, they're going to hit me, which is a miss, plus I lose a little bit of health. So it breaks up your rhythm. So you'll notice in this game that the rhythm and the tempo of the game is crucial. So this is a brawler game. It's as much of a brawler as God of War or DMC or anything like that. It's just taking away all the extra stuff, and all you do is focus on combos, which is all we do anyway. I wish there was maybe 2 levels of play. I wish maybe I could jump or juggle, because that is the awesome quintessential badassery of a brawler game, is to juggle, but I don't think it's really necessary because you feel that way anyway. So let's get into it, and pardon me if I just sound giddy as a schoolgirl, because this game is absolutely incredible to play. I absolutely love it. Everything just feels so extremely crisp. I feel everything is responsive. Everything happens instantly. The animations, even though you can see it and it slows things down, you still feel like you're doing this amazing combo, because the controls just feel epic. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, the weapon that I have now is the nunchucks, and it kind of adds a little bit of extension on your range, so it changes up the playstyle a little bit. And I mean, you cannot button mash. This is not button mashing. This is me adjusting to the enemies that are on the screen and clicking left or clicking right, and it just feels so good. And this is a little mini boss fight. I'm doing terrible because I'm trying to talk, but it's just, I mean, it feels amazing. It feels so good to play this game. I mean, and that's pretty much all I can say while playing, because I'm concentrating so hard on it. It just, you play this game and you have the biggest, stupid, dumb grin on your face. And it's a shame that games nowadays don't do more of this. There's no more of this, you know, stupid dumb grin face while you play anymore. Everything is serious or dark or whatever. This game is not afraid to let you bash the hell out of people, to make their opponent, or to make the enemies feel a little bit weak and have you feel a little bit strong. You just feel so incredible while playing this game, and it's almost hard to pin down, because the mechanics seem so simple. It seems like it would be almost boring to play, because you're only clicking left and right, but because the animations are so responsive and you're able to break the animation in the middle of it to do something. That was one of my main criticisms against the Castlevania game, is that everything feels clunky because you have to wait for this preloaded animation to finish. Almost like the developer said, we spent so much money on this animation, we want you to see it every single time. And they do that at the sacrifice of how the game feels. This doesn't do that. This said, I want this game to feel perfect. And they've done it, but by all I know, I mean, I don't know any other way to say that this game feels better other than to say it 10 times in a row. Between the controls and the speed and the tempo of it, it just, I mean, it just feels so good to play. And we'll go ahead and get into another round here. Hopefully this will have the different kinds of enemies here, which also kind of varies up the way that you play. So some of the enemies can dodge, so you have to adjust it and react to that. Some of them take about 3 hits, some of them take 2 hits, and then they dodge. So they vary up the enemy types. They vary up the enemy types more than most first-person shooters do, and I'm looking at you, BioShock Infinite. So that in itself is incredible, that they can come up with that many enemies on a 2D plane in a brawler whenever you're a stick figure. I mean, they didn't have to do any of this stuff, and they did, and because of it, everything just feels so good. So here, that's one of a unique enemy there. You have to hit them 3 times, and you can just, it feels so good to go from left to right, and your character can just start doing these kind of amazing cross-screen hits, Matrix-style slowdowns, and I mean, it just feels so good. I almost feel like I'm like the worst critic in the world because I don't know what else to say about it. You have to play this game. It's something that's really hard to explain unless you. And that was another thing that I forgot about, is they vary the speed of the enemies dynamically based on how you're doing. So I'll show that in the next one here. If you look up at the top up here, my speed is 105. If it notices that I'm doing better, it'll speed up the enemies. And it will allow me to, see, and this is one enemy boss that varies its color, so it varies the way that you attack it. Anyway, on the speed thing, if it notices that you're doing well, it'll speed up the enemies, and it'll make it dynamically harder. Most brawlers don't have that. They just have a normal, easy, hard mode, and you just select what you want. This has more than that, and it's a stick figure game that uses 2 mouse controls. So I mean, it's just I can't say enough good things about it. I absolutely love this game. It's $4 on Steam. Go pick it up. I've already been on my soapbox for way too long about this game. Pick it up, do it. $4 on Steam. Really is one of the best of these minimalistic, simplistic games that I've played in a long while. Show the developers that this is the kind of stuff that we want, and really, no reason why you shouldn't be playing this game. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and I really hope that games like this can get a little bit more steam. They're not going to get it from me because probably the 5 of you that are going to watch this aren't going to do it, but I really wish you would. But anyway, Blindside out. Thank you guys so much. Have an awesome day.